think that as a composer, I'm just very drawn to emotion and to narrative. Music is a form of communication, and it's a way to express emotions and ideas. The music I write can be very different in terms of actual style, but I think that emotional content, whether that be very joyous, whether that be something to make you dance, whatever it might be, that's always really at the forefront of it. You can kind of lead people on a journey, and you can tell a story through music. Is great. For me, creativity is the way that we make connections with each other. It's the way that we communicate. It's the way that we understand our place in the world, and we process our emotions and what's going on around us. Scottish Ensemble got in touch with me and they said, we'd like to commission you to write something for this tour. And they were great because they actually gave me a very free rein. They basically said, well, what would you like to do? And then I had this idea of the archetypes. So I chose the 5 that kind of musically drew me in the most, and those are the ones I decided to depict. So the first movement is one called the Sage. So the Sage is the character that you often get, the sort of the mystical, magical character. Next up is the Villain. Since I saw that one on the list, that was a very clear-cut one, and that was really fun to explore. I was trying to think, especially with the strings, you can get this really quite sinister sound world from them. The third one is called the Caregiver. That's about this kind of maternal character that you often get in storytelling. It's not necessarily a mother, but somebody that has that role within them. And so this one I wrote sort of in the form of a lullaby. The fourth one is the Shapeshifter, and often in storytellings you get the character that's some sort of jester or trickster type character. And then the final one is one called the Everyman. And the Everyman is essentially like your hero in the story, the person that goes on the journey from being this sort of everyday guy to saving the world or whatever it might be at the end. So I'd been kind of looking for a story that fitted, but then I thought, no, let's go with this archetypes idea, which is much broader and really applies to all the stories that we tell across Scottish storytelling and also kind of wider global storytelling. The idea isn't that one person is one archetype. The idea is that they're all personalities that we can contain within ourselves, and that different things come out at different times depending what it might be. Because these are characters or archetypes that people have known since childhood, they are very instantly recognisable. Each one is almost like this little film in itself. In that 5 minutes you get this sound world, but also it takes you on a little bit of a journey within it. So I tend to be quite an instinctive composer, I would call myself. A lot of my initial ideas come from just improvising, normally at the piano or at the harp. Normally I'll spend, often up to a couple of days just tinkering away, trying out little ideas, getting little fragments that might work. And then it's kind of the process of building out. Often I just actually have to kind of surrender to the process and let myself really enjoy it. The first rehearsal of anything is always quite nerve-wracking. Most of the time I've had a long period of working just with my own instruments and with the computer. So I've kind of got an idea, maybe up to about 85% of what I think it will sound like, but you're never quite sure whether what you've imagined in your head will quite translate to what's written on the page. So it is always nerve-wracking, and you're always nervous to see how the players will react. Are they responding well to it? I think one of the things that I've definitely learned from being a creative for the last 20 years is that you have no control over what people will make over what you do. Hopefully people will like it. The Scottish Creations Tour ties together lots of different art forms, so it's tying together visual art and music. It's tying together this idea that creativity can come from lots of different places and have lots of inspiration, and a lot of that is coming from our Scottish landscape and from our Scottish stories. And as a composer, you get a commission, you write it, you email it off, people thousands of miles away perform it, and that's the end of that sort of transaction, essentially. One of the really lovely things about this is the fact that I get to spend time with the musicians. I really get to know them, I get to form relationships with them and with the group as a whole. It's definitely a celebration of music making and art making, kind of at every level. Mull is a place that I've spent a lot of time, especially kind of over the last few years. The landscape definitely has a huge influence on my music. Sometimes that's subconscious, sometimes that is very conscious. I think that in Scotland our collective experience is so shaped by the landscape we're in, by the fact that we're an island, that the sea is such a big part of our lives traditionally. It's a landscape I'm very familiar with, it's people I'm very familiar with, and it feels like a very natural homecoming type of venue tonight. One of the strangest things as a composer is to then have to completely let go of the music when you just sit in the audience for the first time and you let the players do their thing. Scottish Ensemble are absolutely phenomenal, so I know the music's in really good hands. The thing I'm most looking forward to for tonight's performance is really, actually, as scary as it is just to sit back and hear the whole thing run with no interruptions, no stopping to change anything, just letting it be really and letting it go out into the world and see the reaction.